You're listening to the No Bullshit Vegan Podcast, episode 206. Coach and clinical nutritionist Chris Barker is here to do some serious myth busting about fitness and nutrition and discuss his new book, Mansplaining the Menopause.
Welcome to the No Bullshit Vegan Podcast. Myth busting and evidence-based advice to help you kick butt with your health and fitness on a vegan diet. Here's your host, Karina Inkster.
Hey, welcome to the show. I'm Karina, your go-to no-B.S. vegan fitness and nutrition coach. Thanks for joining me today. Coach Zoe, who works on my coaching team with our amazing clients, recently sent me an Instagram video. She said, and I quote, "Put this guy on your radar, maybe a podcast guest. He does some hilarious debunking. He isn't vegan, but he talks about veganism in a really positive and respectful way." Now, the video was a brilliant mockery of some harmful nutrition rhetoric spouted by a so-called influencer, and also some science-based nutrition tactics that actually work. And I love calling people out on harmful and potentially dangerous bullshit, and I love when other coaches do it. So I knew I had to have our guest today on the show for a chat. If you're ready to get stronger, fuel your training with plants, and finally have a plan that works for real life, I would love to work with you. My team and I have helped hundreds of vegans and veg-curious folks around the globe build sustainable strength and nutrition habits without diet culture bullshit. If that sounds like the kind of coaching you've been looking for, apply now at karinainkster.com/coaching. That's karinainkster.com/coaching. Introducing my guest, Chris Barker. He's a clinical nutritionist and personal trainer with a focus on female health, fat loss, and longevity. He's been working in the health and fitness industry for over a decade. He has additional qualifications in sleep, fertility, pre- and postnatal training, menopause, and more. And he makes the most entertaining and BS-busting Instagram videos. His favorite vegan meal is plant-based pizza. He's not vegan himself, but he can't eat cheese. So that's an excellent option. Here's our conversation. Hi, Chris. Thank you so much for speaking with me today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So I have to tell our listeners how we came across you. It was actually Coach Zoe, who's my colleague who works with our clients, who was scrolling Instagram and came across your profile and was like, "Oh, fellow bullshit busting coach. Hooray." Calling people out on their bullshit. So I want to talk about that, but that's kind of how we came across your internet presence, was the BS busting angle of what is wrong with the fitness industry and let's call people out. So anyway, thank you for the work you do in the BS busting fitness scene.
Thank you. My pleasure, I guess.
Well, I mean, it is the no bullshit show here. So it is kind of our job, we feel, to pick away at the giant mountain of BS that exists within our own industry. And we need more people like you who are calling things out, telling it like it is, presenting evidence-based information that isn't complete BS. So hooray, glad to connect with you.
Well, it's sort of a sad state of affairs that it has to happen like that, I guess. But that is the world we live in now, where the loudest voices aren't often the ones with the most value to add, as it were.
Yep, that's true. So tell me a little bit about how you got into the coaching scene, just generally, and then I want to talk about your target audience as well.
I've always been into sport, I guess, and was, as soon as I was allowed in the gym when I think I was like 15, I grew up on the sort of Arnold Schwarzenegger films when I was a kid, so I wanted to get bigger and stronger. But then I got hit with a diagnosis of Crohn's disease when I was 19, and that sort of threw my world for a sort of loop, as it were. But it sort of garnered a passion for understanding the body better, and especially nutrition. And that's sort of what started a lifelong sort of passion of nutrition now that eventually led me to become a clinical nutritionist. I did go into the personal training sphere first and foremost because it seemed more like an obvious sort of transition to be like, well, I like training. People are asking me to train them. Why not make a career out of it? But I quickly found that I wasn't helping people to the fullest of what I thought I could. So that's where, I started to do more sort of research. I started to do more sort of qualifications, and therefore, eventually getting into where I am now. But I think that's sort of is a abridged version of how I've got to where I am.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of the same for me, personal interest. I mean, nobody was surprised when I said, hey, I'm going to become a fitness coach. They're like, well, obviously. So it was probably pretty similar for you, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think it was more surprising it didn't happen sooner, I guess. But
yes.
I think there's always that sort of... I had friends who were fitness instructors and personal trainers and stuff, and along the way where it becomes a job, it can sort of detract from the sort of enjoyment you get out of it yourself, depending on why you've got into it, I guess. So I was a little bit hesitant to sort of being like, this is what I love, but if I turn it into work, maybe it would spoil it. And then actually, I think I saw the enjoyment of helping people, and that sort of actually made the career choice even better. But I think I was worried at the start that because that was my safe space, that then being harassed for work would then, spoil it, as it were. But it's not the case.
That's not the case. That's good. It did happen to me when I was running a little vegan catering bakery business, home-based, where I was doing like wedding cupcakes and all this kind of stuff. Loved baking, hated running a business for that specific thing. It just took all the joy out of it. I shouldn't say all of it, but it was more stressful than baking for fun. Whereas I don't know what is different. I've been training now for 15 years and I still love it like day one. So I don't know what's different. Maybe there's a different kind of pressure. It's still work, but I still love what I do.
I can't say I'm overly surprised by that, because I feel like the sort of personal aspect of training and watching people develop is quite rewarding in and of itself, where I guess a bakery, you sort of, it's more worried about the bottom line and,
Right.
getting the right, it becomes more very business centric, where
That's a good point.
I guess like a lot of personal training, the personal element is still there, right? So it's, whilst a business, it's very different sort of models. So I can't say I'm surprised. My old man was always like, you should open a gym. And I was like, I've met many gym owners. They're not that happy. So I was I think you're then again sort of layering more of a business model on top of it.
Exactly.
Where it detracts from what you can do, on a personal basis. So that was always like a hard no from me. I don't want to give myself more responsibility. So.
And you're completely online as a coach, right?
Yes. I mean, I do consultations in person if people are in sort of the London area. So I've been at a gym since it opened. So I have a very good relationship with the owner. So I still teach 2 classes a week there, which is quite nice to just get sort of, I get to shout at people for fun. But it's quite nice to just have that. Otherwise, I'm sat at a laptop all day. So it's quite nice to have a human element still involved. And actually, most days I go in there and I just work at the front of the gym, because I find it's more productive if I'm in an environment of like work, as it were. And I'm going to train anyway, so it kind of like just keeps it efficient. I feel like if I'm sat, I live alone, if I'm sat here the whole, it's a little bit sad.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So your target population, the folks that you work with, are females, focusing on general female health, also fat loss, longevity, perimenopause, postmenopause, fertility. Why females?
It's a good question. I actually did so I work in a very affluent area in London, or I did when I joined this gym, right? You sort of look at the other trainers as your competition, and I was like, what could differentiate me from the others? There was a lot of yummy mummies, as it were. So I was like, I'll do a pre- and postnatal qualification so that I can sort of, again, distinguish myself from some of the other trainers. And I actually went into it and I was just so sort of, I think, gobsmacked at the end of the qualification. Not the qualification itself was like amazingly well run, but it just gave me like little insights into like the differences that I was so unaware of, and how shockingly like bad a lot of personal training is. And that just sort of sparked a passion within me to be like, I want to understand this more, the sort of sex differences, how this translates to nutrition, training modalities, sort of stress. And it just sort of went from there when I was doing sort of my qualifications in clinical nutrition, I was given the option of like different electoral choice models, and fertility nutrition was one of them. So I did that. Again, super interesting. And I was getting to the age where a lot of my friends were either having kids, or I was in the age group of people, again, starting that sort of journey in their life. And I was like, oh, well, it'd be quite good to understand this better so I can advise friends, family, but also clients. And then it just, again, like, the more you learn, the more you're sort of like, one, aware of the sort of massive shortcomings in the research, but also in just people's general knowledge when it comes to sex differences. And then it sort of just naturally went into sort of like perimenopausal, menopausal coaching. So I did extra qualifications on that. And it's so interesting to me. And it's very weird. I mean, like, look at me. I don't look like I'm going to care about the menopause. But it was just one of those ones where you're just like, why is this not spoken about more? Why is it that we know so little? Why is it so badly spoken about? It was just a natural progression, I felt.
That makes sense. Yeah, especially online. It's different in person, but especially online, we need very specific niches, and we need very specific audiences that our material is geared toward. It comes to us in different ways, right? It could be the vegan angle, or it could be the pre and post menopause angle. It could be anything. It could be specific sports that people train for.
I spoke to people early on in like my career who were saying you need to like niche down. I didn't really understand because I wanted to help as many people as I could. So I was like,
Right.
Why would I sort of section myself off into like sort of being like, I only work with men of this age category? But as I just started to go into the different spheres of like female health and stuff like that, it just sort of naturally happened. I still actually work with men because obviously at the same time, a lot of the basics translate, and I have trained men for years. So I do have some guys on my coaching platform, predominantly like they see me train, they're like, well, or they're the partner of someone I'm training, and they're like, can you do a program for me? So I would say 90% of my clients are women. Predominantly, I would say, 30 to 50 is sort of the age bracket, but I have younger women with like PCOS, endometriosis, but also I've got the occasional guy thrown in there who just wants to like, I would say there's a bit of aesthetics driven goal more in the guys I see, but I do try and keep the sort of conversation going around longevity. So I think a lot of the men are starting to realize that as well. So that's where that sort of comes in, but it's a bit more interesting than the sort of what I was used to, which was like guys just wanting bigger biceps or better abs. And for me, that I just don't care about that, if I'm honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, we're on the same page there. I mean, there's nothing wrong with aesthetic goals. There's nothing wrong with wanting different body composition or, fat loss, muscle gain, whatever. We're all human. We want to look great. That's totally fine. But I think if we're focusing on those things is the only reason we're training, or all of our marketing is about those things, it kind of sets us up for failure, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. It's also like, for me, it's not the most rewarding part. Like, obviously, it's really nice when my clients feel more confident and comfortable in their skin. I love that. But that doesn't need to be the sole focus. And I feel like quite often, if that is the sole focus, it's quite easy to go down the wrong route, and people get lost in that sort of idea. But also, like, let's be honest, like, anyone who's marketing themselves as like, I'm going to get you shredded,
right,
probably doesn't understand the nuances involved in like actually improving people's health metrics. But also, they probably won the genetic lottery and are naturally,
yes,
just lean year round, like, again. So it's kind of like, well done.
Well, there's a whole other layer to that, though. I just had a conversation with my friend who I co-direct the open water swim club with in my city. And we were looking at marathon swimmers. A marathon swim is 10K. So 10K of swimming, open water. Insane. That's the equivalent of running a full marathon.
Yeah, no,
and so, right. And we were talking about this specific Instagram account of an amazing marathon swimmer who she's in the UK. She's got multiple records, world first crossings, and just amazing swimmer. But she doesn't, and I'm using quotes here, look like a swimmer, right? She's in a larger body, which most marathon swimmers are. Extra insulation, right? So we had this whole conversation about, not only is there a lot of bullshit about what an athlete looks like, but even within the whole, like, body diversity, all athletes look different camp, there's not enough representation. There's not enough showing people who might be female and 220 pounds and amazing athletes with world records, So there's kind of that extra layer, I think.
Yeah, I think if you're only like looking at the aesthetics, then you're taking out the performance metric, which is
Right.
Very important for certain sports, but also aesthetically isn't necessarily healthy, is it? And it can go down very various sort of eating disorders, which definitely isn't healthy. So I think it's, again, like, especially for women in sports, I mean, things like red S is very like rife in like the female athletics world. So, you've got to be very careful around that sort of narrative, as it were.
Can you explain red S for our listeners who might not know what that stands for?
Sorry. So reduced energy deficiency in sport. It was, I think, previously called the female athlete triad, and then they changed it to like red S because men can suffer from it as well. But essentially, it's when you're not eating enough calories or food, as it were, to support your sort of basic bodily functions. So if you're sort of burning 2,000 calories because you're doing an open water swim, but you're only like eating 2,000 calories, then it's kind of like, well, your body naturally has to start like, it starts shutting down. I mean, like, imagine your phone running out of battery and it stops like the unimportant apps from working kind of thing. But this is where we see a lot of iron deficiency anemia and sort of amenorrhea in women, sort of especially in like female athletes, especially around sort of when there's weight categories involved or certain like sort of looks. I know it's, the statistics are crazy in things like ballet and like gymnastics and stuff like that.
Absolutely. I always use myself as an example. I mean, my genetics make me have a ridiculous metabolism, and my whole family is just lean, even if they sit around and do nothing, which most of them don't. But anyway, but even then, the only time I have ripped abs is when I'm having a major anxiety episode that lasts multiple weeks or months. So I have anxiety long term. It's been very well managed lately. But if I ever have like visible abs, it's because I'm not eating enough and I'm depleted and I feel like absolute shit. So, to your point of like the aesthetic piece does not always equate with the health piece. I know that from experience for myself.
Yeah, and also, like, I mean, again, if you're looking at, like, what's portrayed on social media, right, it's either the genetic elite or you don't know what's gone behind that picture, like whether there's, like, carb loading, water manipulation, performance-enhancing drugs, diuretics, lighting, photo editing. Like, it's a warped reality. So you might look at that and go, oh, those abs look great, but you don't really understand what's going on behind the scenes. So I just think it's unfortunate. It's part of life, I guess. Marketing and everything is designed to push. Well, like years ago, it was skinny is sexy or whatever, and then it was like, I think it's a good thing that now it's a bit more like coming into the forefront that strong is the new sexy kind of narrative.
It's still telling women how they should look, though.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying it's probably a little bit better than it was.
Right. Yes. Agreed.
But again, trends in what's hot or not is something you'll never get ahead of. So it's kind of, I will take the wins where we can get them. Kind of.
Well, it is moving in the right direction. It just seems to be happening fairly slowly.
Yes, but I also think I don't think you'll ever win on this, because I think whilst it's moving in the right direction, I just did a video yesterday on, it was Serena Williams pushing Manjaro or whatever, and you're just like, it begs the question, where are we heading next? Is it going to be the case of you've got the sort of epidemic of Ozempic, sort of, is everyone going to go back to being way too skinny? Like, you're going to have like a future generation of like malnourished people because they're all, drugged up to the nines. This is just...
But we don't really know at this point.
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see where it goes, but I mean, retatrutide, which is, I think, the next line of drugs coming out, seems more potent. So again, it's going to be interesting to watch what happens. But I did sit there and watch the Serena Williams video and sort of went into it. I actually ended up doing quite a few takes, because as I was doing the takes, I was like changing my opinion as I was watching it back, going like, Yeah, I don't think this is a good idea, actually. Like, I started trying to be balanced and being like, well, I can see, like, it's her body, her choice kind of thing. But the more I watched it, the more I was like, this is really sort of like sexing up what is a pharmacological drug. Like, this should not be advertised. Like, it should be prescribed by doctors for people who genuinely need it, not like
Exactly.
join the row club. You're like, oh, that's not a good idea.
Not to get like too deep into the weeds on this particular thing, but my initial response was there's something fucking wrong with the system here. Like, no shade to Serena, her body, her choice for sure. But there's something wrong with the system that makes it seem like she's not enough as a world-class athlete who isn't skinny.
I mean, yeah, I didn't realize it until like I made the video, and then lots of people commented saying that her husband or something has got.
Yeah, he's got stakes in the company.
He's got shares in it, so then it muddies it even more. Like, I do think it's an interesting one why, she ever felt she needed to. But again, like, I guess was it her second child or something? Maybe it was harder to shift the weight as like previously, and she felt because she's in this public spotlight a need to. I mean, I can't talk as someone who's not in the public spotlight,
right?
What the pressures would be like, but I can imagine. If I put myself in her shoes, I'm sure the spotlight is quite a glaring thing to stare at, and the pressures are higher to try and look a certain way. So I can't really.
Yeah, that's fair. I have no understanding of what that would be like, but I think the system is broken, though.
I don't think you should be able to advertise pharmacological drugs like that. Like, no.
It's a good point. Hey, tell me about your new book that's coming out. And also, side note, since it's called Mansplaining the Menopause, do you folks in the UK call it the menopause? Because we never put the in front of it. We would say mansplaining menopause.
Yeah, so I think grammatically we put the menopause.
Okay.
I think I put on the blurb, like at the back, mansplaining menopause.
Okay.
My editor was like, the menopause. So I think it is like, it's more of a grammatical thing.
Interesting.
But yeah, so that's hopefully coming out, in September. It'll probably be like towards the end of September, but I got to record the Audible version because I know a lot of people don't read or don't have time to read, I should say, which I'm sort of dreading because it's a little bit more, there's a lot of words in there that I'm like, like they were hard enough to type. So pronouncing them on the Audible will be interesting. But I started last year and I finished it back in sort of March, I think, end of March. And then it just goes into like editing phases and stuff like that. So it's a really fun process, and I'm hoping like it's well received. I mean, it's obviously the title is inflammatory, but on purpose kind of thing.
Yeah, of course.
At the end of the day, it's literally like a deep dive into the literature. So whilst it's titled Mansplaining the Menopause, it's really just someone with no sort of pony in the race, as it were, just saying, this is what the literature says, this is how you can help best navigate it. I'm not saying it from my experience, obviously. I'm not like, I almost think that's a better way to come from it because I've got no personal bias. So I'm not imprinting any sort of potential biases into it. I'm literally going, this is what, the most up-to-date literature says. I did want to make sure that a lot of the myths surrounding HRT and stuff were dispelled, so I spent a lot of time in that. And I also spoke to like HRT specialists and menopause specialists whilst writing it. But the idea is I sort of take you through it. So it's sort of like I set you up, I help you explain the basics of like what the menopause is, because a lot is like really badly understood, considering like most women should go through it, right? You'd hope. But so I sort of explain the like sort of what it is, what happens, and then I sort of go through each of the sort of the main side effects that you experience, why they occur, how you can navigate them holistically and pharmacologically. And then after sort of discussing those and the long-term health implications of, the changes that occur because of the menopause, I then do sort of like a bigger sort of chunks on HRT, then sort of exercise, diet, and sort of lifestyle modifications, so that you get this sort of, I call it sort of like a roadmap to sort of help you navigate the menopause. So the idea is to try and open up the conversation, because obviously as a man in his 30s, hopefully like, maybe other men would be interested, but also hopefully younger women who are actually the target demographic. I'm not really talking to people who've already gone through it because they're like, I don't fucking care. It's more to do with like, if you're in your late 30s, early 40s, like you want to be taking a proactive approach to these things. And actually by learning about what you could potentially go through, you can set your lifestyle up already in order, like in anticipation, but also I think by having the understanding of what, signs to look out for and stuff like that, you have a better sort of understanding of when you could approach your GP around HRT and what you could speak to them about. But also, like, I think a lot of it is missed because of people's like lack of understanding. So that they think it's just their hormones making them crazy, or like, they're just like being more forgetful, or like, their metabolism slowing down and all these things. Like, without understanding what's happening, you're sort of making it harder for yourself.
Interesting. So you mentioned a couple things here. One is younger folks like 30s, early 40s, setting themselves up well for perimenopause, postmenopause. And then the other piece is misinformation. So there's a lot of bullshit, just incorrect, probably pseudoscience around menopause and hormones and all these things. So let me ask you about the first one. I'm 39.
Yeah.
Caveat here is that folks in my family go through menopause super late. So I've got like 20 years, but still, let's assume that's not the case. The average, I think, is like early 50s for menopause.
Yeah, so the average age of menopause is 52.
There you go.
But that usually means that there's sort of like, because menopause itself is essentially a day that marks like a year without your cycle.
Yeah.
So what we tend to talk about when we talk about the menopause is actually the perimenopause. So it's the changes in hormones leading up to the menopause, leading up to that one day. That can last quite a considerable amount of time. So whilst the average age is like 52, that usually means that people will start probably experiencing it on average between 47, 48, maybe start seeing like fluctuations in cycle length, or, starting to develop things like hot flushes. That's usually the sort of average. But again, like you brought up your mother, right? So there is a genetic element. So it's quite often like it's a good idea to ask your mum when she went through it, if she remembers.
Yeah, it's super late in our family.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a good thing for you. The earlier it is, usually, like, obviously, there's more risk for long-term health complications. What I would say is, by knowing when, like, again, you could sort of at least address some lifestyle things ahead of time to help prevent, potentially making it earlier. So like things like smoking, drinking too much, being overweight, all these things can contribute to an earlier menopause. But then you have the sort of, I think before the age of 45, if I remember correctly, is called early menopause. And then before the age of 40, I think it's called premature menopause or ovarian insufficiency, or primary ovarian insufficiency. And there's like various like medical reasons, or like it could be a sort of induced because of like chemotherapy or a removal of like ovaries and stuff like that. So just understanding the sort of like signs to look out for. I'm a big proponent of like tracking your cycle, because I think it just gives you feedback every month anyway. Like in terms of if you learn your natural rhythm better, you can understand how you tend to operate on a month-to-month basis. It may fluctuate, but again, if you've got a better understanding of yourself, then you can also help those around you understand you better, I think. If my missus knows she goes crazy in the sort of late luteal phase, maybe she's like, well, I'll stay at mine at that time. So like, again, there's sort of like the sort of, you understand yourself better, you can be kinder to yourself, but also like help others around you, because a change in cycle length is one of the first signs to show. If you are tracking it, you get that immediate sort of like feedback, as it were. Also, if you suddenly lose your cycle, well, again, this is usually a good sign that something's wrong in your life, right? As we spoke about with Red S, it's kind of like, your body's saying, well, something's not operating like it should. Your sort of fertility is quite a good marker of health. So, yeah, I think like, and it's very basic. Like the problem you get into this, and it's a bit murky water in the sense of like what happens when people are on oral contraception, because that sort of masks some of the symptoms you'd be looking out for. So then it becomes a little bit of a harder one to understand.
That's a good point. There's only been one time where I've missed a cycle, and it was totally my body saying, something's wrong here.
Was it anxiety?
No, it was COVID, first of all. It was a horrendous migraine and performing a full show all on the same day.
Oh, wow.
With my band. I couldn't say no to the gig. I felt like I would let them down. I probably should not have done it. It was super stressful. I mean, it went well.
You missed that whole month of the cycle.
Yeah.
But only the 1 month.
Only the one in my entire life. So not too bad.
So again, it does sort of illustrate the impact stress can have on your body, right? So
yep, totally. It's a good kind of litmus test, right, for what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I always tell people it's just quite a good litmus test to sort of help you understand. If you're still quite regular, it's probably quite a good sign. Nothing's too out of whack. Again, a bit of a generalization, but quite often it's quite good to work in terms of those sort of lines of thinking before people will usually catastrophize. And if that's your litmus test is usually quite a good sign that things haven't gone too far, of course.
Good point. So let's say our listeners are strength training and doing some kind of cardio that they enjoy. Most of our listeners are somewhere on the plant-based spectrum. They're not all vegan, but they're veg curious. I mean, they're listening to the no bullshit vegan for some reason. But what should they be thinking about if they're like me, late 30s, early 40s? Nothing's really changed yet, but it might soon. What, if anything, do they need to change about what they're currently doing?
To be fair, what you described sounds like quite a health conscious person already. So I'm not really sort of talking in specificity in terms of necessarily for women, because I feel like the foundations apply to both genders, as it were. It's kind of like longevity. So, resistance training in order to maintain muscle mass, improve muscle mass. Obviously, that gets a little bit harder going through the menopause. So, if you can focus more on the resistance training, building up that strength right now, fantastic. Obviously, also improving sort of bone mineral density. Outside of that, trying to remain a healthy weight is obviously just improving most health metrics anyway. You've already said your audience is predominantly sort of on the spectrum of plant-based, which probably means they're already eating enough fiber and plant foods. So usually that would be one of the ones I'd be focusing on in terms of dietary practices. It sounds like they're already doing it. So I would say making sure that they're intaking enough protein, especially alongside that resistance training. Again, it becomes a little bit harder if you're plant-based, but I say that very sort of loosely because I'm a fan of plant-centric eating. I don't necessarily follow it myself, but I think a lot of where we're going wrong is most people don't eat enough of it. In terms of the protein, obviously it can be a little bit less bioavailable because it's tied up in the sort of plant matrix, as it were. But for the most part, as long as you're getting a wide variety of plant protein sources, you're not only getting the right amount of amino acids anyway, you're probably getting enough protein in general. So it's I would just be make sure that you've tracked it for a period of time to make sure you're getting in X amount that is applicable to you. A rule of thumb would be I'd say in the menopause, I usually go a little bit higher. So it's 2 grams per kilogram of body weight as a sort of general guide. I don't love it, but in the sense of because muscle protein synthesis is a little bit blunted for women when they've lost their estrogen, you want to be on that higher end of the sort of optimal range. So I know I think Dr. Stacey Sims, who's
I was
quite
just going to mention her. You beat me to it.
Who's quite well versed in this sphere. She goes up to 2.4 grams, I think, per kilogram of body weight. So again, I think it's one of those where it's if you're an older woman, I'm talking 1.8 to 2.4 grams, great. For most people, they're probably okay with 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight. I think a lot of people over push the sort of protein button, but I do think
agreed.
I do think it's important, especially as with the loss of estrogen, it becomes a little bit more sort of we are desperately trying to make sure we maintain muscle mass and potentially build it. Again, it's not impossible, but you want to be on the higher end at that point. But if your listeners are in their 30s, 1.6 is absolutely fine, I reckon.
Yeah, I would agree. And I also agree that people over push that protein button. It's to the point sometimes where we have a client who comes in who was with a previous coach at some point whose protein ratio was so high that it started affecting their ability to eat vegetables and fruit because they were, quote, too high in carbs. Like, there's a problem when you're eating so much protein that you don't have space in your diet for vegetables.
Yeah, it also sort of misses the point. Like, I think, like, for a lot of the part, we're trying to, like, if we're trying to lose weight, right, we push protein and fiber because they're more satiating. There's a higher thermic effect of food. But also with things like fruits and vegetables, you get higher volume for lower calories. So it's a great way of, filling up. When you start getting to the point where you're like, I can't fit in vegetables because I'm eating too much protein, you're kind of like, well, you've kind of, I feel like you've gone a little bit wayward there. Like, that should never be the case. But also, like, after a certain amount, you're not getting more bang for your buck, as it were.
Right.
So you've maxed out muscle protein synthesis. You're not getting any additional benefits. In fact, actually, it's just not a great way to do it. I'd rather get more carbohydrates at this point in from, like, fruits and vegetables, because I'm getting more micronutrients in. I'm getting more fiber in, but also, like unless you're obsessed with protein, enjoy the other macronutrients as well.
Absolutely.
Protein became such a buzzword, and I'm probably guilty of it myself, usually going for I think 5 years ago, I was definitely always like 2 grams per kilogram. And then you actually look at it and you're like, actually, especially if I work with a lot of people who are on the veggie spectrum, right? It becomes harder with their food choices, and then you're like, they're struggling to actually enjoy their food.
Exactly.
And then actually, like, when you look at it, well, the total calories is actually the most important thing. And are they getting enough protein to achieve what we're trying to do? Yes. Then why are you trying to make them eat more, kind of thing?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, like, after, like, a general, like, sort of woman who weighs like 60 kilograms, after 100 grams of protein have gone in, like, are they now just like deep throating pea protein because they can't like get any more in from like tofu? Like, it's kind of
pretty much.
That doesn't sound fun.
It is not fun. I've never done it myself, but we have clients who have, and they're like, it is not sustainable.
Yeah, like, again, like, if you're like me and you're not sort of, I eat sort of meat and stuff like that, there's an easier way I can get more protein in easier, and actually through more sort of variety of food. So then actually putting a slightly higher protein level for me isn't detrimental to my food choices. But if you are like sort of going where you've sort of really limited like the fat intake or the carb intake for a vegetarian, they're like, I literally have to just deep throat pea protein, or I'm going over my other macros according to what you're after. And it just...
Yeah, it's not worth it.
It's not worth it.
No, agreed. So on that note, what are some of the myths or some of the BS that you come across? You mentioned this earlier in terms of perimenopause, menopause itself. What are some of the kind of big things that you see in the fitness industry that are just completely incorrect?
I think one of the ones, and I did a video on that yesterday, is just sort of a lot of women believe that they are just going to put on fat at that time, and then it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I'm actually like, if you understand why women are putting weight on at this time, you can actually see why, like, actually we have the tools available to us to navigate around that. Now, it does become harder, I'm not going to lie, because, like, of the side effects of going those fluctuations in hormones, it makes it harder for you, but it makes it harder for you in a way that is still accountable regardless of your gender. Like, I'm a bloke, but if you deprived me of sleep because I was sweating in the night and then, like, you ramped up my anxiety levels, I'm probably going to find it harder to stick to my calories, regardless of, like, gender. So it's kind of like, let's stop looking at it as a sort of, like, woe is me, like, I'm just destined to put on fat. And actually, like, if you are proactively, like, making sure you're not over-consuming calories and you are still... I think what we tend to see is a reduction in sort of energy expenditure around that time. And therefore, like, maybe they're not resistance training anymore, or they never were. You then start to see this sort of drop off in muscle mass. So you do, like, whilst the research, and they did a really great study on it in 2021, looking at like 6,000 people over 29 different countries, where they showed basically your metabolic rate between the ages of 20 to 60 stays pretty fucking stable.
Right.
There's a bit in there where it's kind of like, if you don't account for the changes, so like essentially if you remain the same weight, but we took off some of your muscle and put on a bit of fat, you probably have seen a reduction in muscle in metabolic rate, but it's not really showing up because you're still remaining roughly the same weight. So it's kind of like there is room for like us to go, look, there is a sort of propensity because of the, again, the side effects that you're suffering, but also because like now you've got potentially more insulin resistance, higher elevated levels of cortisol to store more central adiposity. But actually, again, if we can control calories and actually if you can maintain that muscle mass through resistance training, high protein diet, then actually you can really like sort of maintain your figure. And I've seen it time and time again. So it's kind of like, I think there's just that negative self-talk that I see quite a lot in like, and it does unfortunately filter through because it becomes like how misinformation usually begins is someone's trying to sell you nonsense, right? So if I'm someone on Instagram, I might be like, I can tap into your fear of potentially putting weight at that time and then sell you some apple cider vinegar. Or I did one the other day where it was this lady was saying like, you've been lied to if you're eating after 7 p.m. And then she went on to try and like twist the sort of hormonal like narrative to be like calories count like double after that time. It's like,
that's ridiculous.
No, it doesn't. Like, so I think that's like, again, with a lot of misinformation, it's like fear mongering. So you buy into what I'm selling. So I think weight is a big one for menopausal women because it's obviously a fear. It's also quite common. So again, it's definitely one that's tapped into with like, buy this nonsensical sort of supplement. Or you'll see like, I've seen pages where they're like putting together terrible exercise routines, claiming that it's the best way to train at that time. And you're like, it's just categorically not. So like, again, I think it's a bit of a strange one. Because menopause is becoming a bit more buzzwordy, a bit more popular, again, you've got more sort of influencers tapping into it. A bit like we saw with cycle syncing became very popular at one point. And it's just kind of like you'll then get fitness people who are just trying to niche into something. So there's been a bit more sort of posting in terms of like collagen gummies and, all these sort of things that are popping off, like in terms of just general supplements push towards menopause, but there's no efficacy really around them. I would say HRT is the one that is like sort of has been sort of lingering for a long time. And it is actually one of the biggest sort of, I would say, medical faux pas, judging by the sort of like the impact it had on like millions of women. So the studies that came out where they were sort of like showing a link between HRT and like breast cancer and like cardiovascular disease and all these things. So the studies were like cut off because they were like, well, it clearly does these things. I think Dr. Peter Attia, someone who I really liked his book, he said it was like one of the biggest medical mess ups in sort of known date because of actually how bad the study was, how twisted the results were. And they actually didn't even show what was reported. Even some of the authors were like, well, we didn't come to that conclusion. Like that was, someone else has just put that out, like without our knowledge. So like the headlines, and this is the thing, like bad news is more popular, but it also remains in your mindset for longer.
Yes,
so,
for sure.
Once those headlines were published being like HRT causes breast cancer or HRT, causes stroke, it was then like, that was the damage done. When they did, no one cared when they posted a retraction like a few years later. Like it just, it probably went on the back pages of the newspaper. No one read it. So, I think the HRT conversation is so important, not because like everyone necessarily needs to take it, but you should at least go into the conversation knowing the options available to you. And actually the like fucking risks are so minimal. And again, with every drug, there's a risk to reward sort of ratio that you need to assess with
of course
your doctor and yourself. But for the most part, and I go into it in the book, is kind of like, even if you've got certain types of breast cancer, like sort of the genes that make you more susceptible, even for them, it's kind of like, well, it might still probably be worth it for your quality of life and your reduction in sort of long-term health risks. So I think that one is just the biggest one. That doesn't really come out on social media, to be honest. So I'm not actually thinking like, that's not misinformation that you see or I see on a day-to-day basis. That's sort of lingering misinformation from years ago that still sits in women's minds. So that's part of why I was like, I need to write about this, but I don't see that much. That's not really on Instagram. I feel that's probably too highbrow for the sort of biohackers and idiots that we usually debunk, or chiropractors for that matter.
Oh my God, don't even get me started. Hey, one random question before I let you go. Are you wearing an Oura ring?
I am, yes. Yeah.
I know, I am too. Our listeners can't see us. They can only hear us, but we're Oura ring buddies.
Great.
So tell me, I'm curious. It's been 7 or 8 months for me now. 7 months, I think. How do you find it? Would you recommend it? What do you think?
So I've had an interesting relationship. So I got this I think it was before lockdown. So I'm Gen 1
like
or whatever.
years.
Yeah.
Okay.
When it first came out. Because I was like, I think I just read Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, which if you haven't read it, read it. I mean, it's brilliant. I'd also done a qualification in sleep, and it was just learning more about the benefits of sleep. Now, I don't really care about tracking my workouts or whatever. I'm not the biggest sort of nut when it comes to those health metrics. I like to work out, but I'm not too bothered. And maybe I should get back into that now that I'm thinking out loud. But I got it because I really was fascinated to find out my quality of sleep. I think when I first got it, it actually had a negative impact on my sleep because I was then hyper focusing on it. So then if I woke up where I would normally just roll back over, I was then like, oh my God, it's going to ruin my sleep score. And then because I was thinking so much about it, I was then in my head, I then think I got worse sleep. And I also think it was just I didn't like the idea that it was sort of then trying to tell me how I should feel. I was but I slept well. And then it was you slept terribly. I'm like, I know how I feel. But I think after that initial sort of falling out, I really enjoy the sort of data it gives me on a day-to-day in the sense of I can then actually see almost in real time, if I've eaten too late, boom, it immediately affects my sleep. Or, I can look at it and go I wonder why, what have I done differently that's caused that? And usually it really improves sort of behavioral patterns where I'm okay, I'll stop drinking at this time. Not I'm having to think about it, but because of the feedback in terms of when I've got good night's sleeps, when I've got bad night's sleeps, it's reinforcing different behaviors to try and improve that. And I think sleep is just, it's the most, I think Matthew Walker puts it it's the thing that's most important to your health, because you can survive longer without food or water, but if you deprive someone of sleep, it's torture. It's literally a form of torture. So it's it really makes you think about how vastly important sleep is. And it's one of those things that, again, the more you dive into the literature in terms of whether it's weight loss, whether it's in terms of cognitive decline and stuff like that, sleep is just paramount. So it's I like having the feedback to being how I'm getting on. I don't like it when I have a long haul flight and then I get my reading and I'm like,
shit. Yeah, I went into it thinking exactly the same. I don't need a piece of tech to tell me that I had a shitty sleep last night. I mean, it's pretty obvious. I also don't want a piece of tech to tell me how I should spend my day. I'm going to decide that for myself. The main reason I got it is, first of all, to remind me to get off my ass throughout the day, because I work out every day, but then I sit at a computer or my bike desk, but I'm still technically sitting. Anyway, so it's been helpful for that. It's got a little score, how long have you been inactive and how many alerts has it given you when you haven't moved for an hour. So that's been helpful. I don't really care about the workout piece either. The only thing I care about tracking is swimming, and I use a separate thing for that.
I also don't think it's very good for fitness tracking.
No, it's not.
I think it's good for steps, and I use it for that anyway. And I'm with you there. I like the notifications. It told me your bedtime is coming up. I quite like those little things.
Exactly.
I don't like it when I'm on the loo and it's you've been inactive for a while, and I'm like, how dare you?
How dare you? You know what's really cool is it predicted that I was getting sick before I knew it. And also, for the entire time I've had it, it has told me to the day when I'm going to get my period based on my body temperature.
Interesting. That is so interesting.
Super interesting.
You've got a newer generation, so I think I just get very I feel like I'm in the more rudimentary health readings, although also I'm not a woman, so it wouldn't give me those. But,
well, there you go.
But that's interesting.
It's super interesting.
Do you track your cycle on it, or?
I do. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
So it's perfect. I used to use a different app, and now it's just all in the Oura. So it's perfect.
I don't love the fact that they made it a subscription. But that's
Yeah,
because
I
I've got so many
know.
subscriptions coming out
I
of my life. I was
know.
like, that's why
Yeah.
I bought this. It was quite expensive at the time, but I bought it and that was it.
Right. So now, do they grandfather you in, or do you now have to pay the subscription?
No, so it still gives me all the same stuff as I've always had. But
Okay.
I think if I get a better ring,
Yeah, right.
I would then have to.
Fair.
I mean, there should be some loyalty.
Well,
Aura, if
you would think,
you're
right?
listening,
Come on, Aura.
yeah,
Get your shit together.
I'm an OG. Send me.
Uh, yeah, I've had a couple clients ask, like, is it worth it? And I guess it depends what the goal is, honestly. Like, if you want to track your workouts, no, not worth it. If you want to track your sleep, yes, definitely worth it. Like you said, you can tag things and you can kind of try your own experiments. And something I've seen a lot on the subreddit for Aura is people noticing how alcohol affects everything.
Yeah.
Activity levels, sleep quality, all those things that they didn't even realize. Like they're in bed for the same amount of time, but their sleep is shitty.
Yeah. Whoop does that as well. Because I have
Yes, it
lots
does.
of people in the gym are always like, well, my Whoop reading is. So I think that's a good thing. And like we have seen that in the culture a little bit. There's a lot less like drinking culture on the weekend. Like it's still life, don't get me wrong. But like I think of, the younger generation who are becoming a bit more health conscious and they're all doing run clubs on the weekend and, just getting shit faced. It's definitely like, you can see that sort of, and they're understanding it better. I think I read somewhere that the Apple Watch is the best all-rounder.
Yeah, that's in line with what I've heard.
Things like Garmin and stuff are terrible for sleep. I don't think, Whoop is just awful as well. But again, if you want more sort of HRV and stuff like that, Whoop is better. I don't want to wear a watch or a
Same.
strap or
I was just going to say it's the ring that really sold it for me because I do a lot of kettlebell work and it's on your forearm where you can't have a watch. It's just in the way.
Yeah.
And I play accordion as my main instrument and the left hand can't have a watch on it because your wrist is in a strap. So it's like, well, I'm not going to wear a watch anyway. So
that was the same for me. How long does your Oura ring last though? Like charge wise?
I do put it on the charger most days, but I think it would be 5 or 6 days straight.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah.
Fair. The Gen 1, not so much.
Not so much.
If I forget to charge it on the second day, it'll be dead.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
I hear you.
That annoys me when I wake up and I check it and it's like run out of battery. And
dang. You're like, it didn't count because it's not in my Oura.
Well as well. I wanted my score. That's actually so funny because like some of my menopausal clients have got them because I was like, I don't push anything, but I was like, I use Oura Ring to track and I do rate it for sleep tracking as it is, again, from the evidence, it would suggest it's one of the better ones. They're now getting better sleep scores than me, which just drives me nuts.
Oh, dear.
They've gone on HRT and they're like hitting the high 80s and 90s. And I'm like, I should never have told you.
You got to have like a top scores kind of board for your clients and yourself.
I sit comfortably in the 70s, I think.
That's not too bad. It's not going to give you a crown, though.
You know what my problem is? I drink, like, not alcohol, but I drink too late in the evening.
Oh,
so I always have to wake up to pee.
Yes. That'll affect me.
I'll fall asleep again quite quickly, but I think that always detracts from my sleep score. So
probably.
I forget, and then I'm like, I'm really thirsty, and then drink, and then I'm like, oh
damn.
Yeah.
There goes my score. Well, in addition to your book that's coming out, Mansplaining the Menopause, you have another book on fat loss, Simply Confusing or Confusingly Simple, the weight loss equation. Is that available on your website?
It's on my Instagram in the bio. It might be on my website. I should probably know.
Well, we'll find out. We are going to link to everything. So we'll have show notes where we're linking to your website and Instagram. You also do one-on-one coaching. You've got a free newsletter on Substack.
Yes.
We could also link to that. Is there anything else in that realm? Things you do, things you want to leave our audience with?
My next book will be out in September. I'm not sure when these go out, but I'm assuming around
It'll be around then. Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, my first book is available on Amazon, Kindle, and Audible, as will this one. If you want to get a taste of my writing, it is on Substack. I come out with newsletters, usually every week, unless I'm in the midst of writing another book. Today was one on cycle syncing and what the current literature says. So I just dive into different topics that come up more regularly on my Instagram feed. Otherwise, one-to-one coaching is what I predominantly do. Predominantly with women, I help to sort of address most like lifestyle dietary practices. We talk about things like stress, sleep. I try and take a sort of 360 holistic approach. So whilst you might be coming to just improve weight, we look at it from every angle to just try and improve like longevity as well. I usually try and get a minimum of sort of 4-month sign up so that I've got enough time to work with you to really make long-lasting change, right? I'm not looking for people who just want a quick fix. By doing this, though, I try and keep my prices down. So because you are willing to commit for longer, I give you a cheaper price. So it's sort of, a positive trade-off, I feel, and also usually pushes away the sort of short-term sort of thinkers.
Totally.
Otherwise, my email address or reach out on Instagram. I do corporate talks or go to different gyms or offices to talk about. I have different qualifications in sort of like gut health, sleep, stress, pre-postnatal, even veganism. I did a qualification in. So
awesome.
Depending on what the topic is that you want your office or gym to learn about, I'm happy to come down and talk, but you just need to reach out on email.
Amazing. Well, Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was fantastic to connect with you.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks again, Chris, for speaking with me. To connect with Chris and check out his book, go to our show notes at nobullshitvegan.com/206. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for listening to the No Bullshit Vegan podcast at nobullshitvegan.com.